It's not about their pedigree. It's not about their athleticism. It's not about their talent. It's about the enthusiasm they bring into the room and the amount of effort.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into Whistlekick, Martial Arts Radio, episode 642, with today's guest, Sensei Linda Lane. I'm Jeremy Lesniak, host for the show. You've probably heard from me before, but if not, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Everything we do here at Whistlekick is in support of the traditional martial arts. It's something I'm very passionate about, something the rest of the team is passionate about, and honestly, something that you all, the listeners, are pretty passionate about. And if you want to go deeper on all the things that we're doing, because we do a lot more than this show, head on over to whistlekick.com, check out the stuff that we make, the other projects that we're involved in, our social media. There's a ton of stuff, and that's really the best place to start. So head on over there and get started. And maybe while you're there, you find something in the store you like, and you can use the code podcast15 to get 15% off. If you want to go deeper on this episode or any other episode of the show, go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. It's a whole separate website. It's also a place you can sign up for the newsletter, stay up on the behind the scenes, get transcripts, links, photos from all of our guests. Lots of cool stuff going on over there. We bring you 2 episodes each and every week, all to connect and educate and entertain you, because you're a martial artist and you love martial arts. So we're here to serve. If all the stuff that we do means something to you, if you want to help us out, there are a bazillion ways you can help us out. Seriously, anything that seems to make sense, please don't be afraid to do it. If you want to connect us with a potential guest, offer us feedback, tell people about what we're doing. It's all good stuff. If you want to throw a couple bucks our way, because this stuff costs money to put it out, and you'll notice that there are no commercials on our show. Not that we're opposed to it, just it hasn't happened. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. We give you extra stuff, more stuff, bonus stuff, just for being a supporter. It's all exclusive. It's not stuff you're going to find elsewhere. So check that out. I had an absolute great time with Sensei Linda. What a wonderful conversation. And just someone that I really appreciated meeting. I get the feeling that you're also going to appreciate meeting her in this context anyway. You know, it's kind of a one-way meeting for you, but I think I did a pretty good job speaking for all of you and giving you an opportunity to connect. So here we go. Sensei Lane, welcome to Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great too. I'm really happy to be here talking to you today.
Hey, I'm happy to have you here. I really do have the best job in the world. I get to talk to martial artists about martial arts and call it work. This thing that most people would love to do and, they'd get fired for. I mean, it's my job. How lucky am I?
Pretty lucky.
Yeah. Well, we're here to talk martial arts, and we're going to start out in the most predictable way possible because it all stems from there. How'd you get started?
Well, I'm one of those people that got a very late start in the martial arts. I'd been a dancer all my life and just found a lot of joy in movement. And as I became a young adult, the body mechanics involved with dance really fascinated me. And then there came a time where I kind of aged out of the dance world and I started my family and whatnot. And then I had kind of a somewhat critical health issue, one that I'm well past now. And the thing I knew I needed was exercise. I knew exercise would be the most healing thing for me. The closest thing to my home was a school of martial arts. And the word arts is what caught me because this was an art. I didn't like the gym. I didn't do well in those kind of environments. So I gave it a shot and I walked in. I just kind of found everything I loved about dance with the added purpose. There's a purpose to the movements in the martial arts. That was how I started. I got my son involved when he was very little because it was much more practical to bring him along with me to a class than it was to hire a babysitter.
Sure.
And so my son kind of grew up in the arts along with me. And we went on to open a dojo together for a while and whatnot. And it's just been a great family experience. My husband, again, was a gym rat. And I said, well, what's the point of all of this workout that you're doing if it has no purpose? And he thought that was something he couldn't argue with. And the next thing I know, he was hooked. So it kind of became a family thing for us.
Now, I want to go back. honed in on the word arts in, I assume, a sign on a building or out front of a building that said martial arts near your home. I would imagine, given that you said you started later in life, you had some preconceived notion about what martial arts was. Do you remember what you thought going in?
Well, I had grown up watching The Karate Kid and all of that stuff. And quite frankly, at a very young age, I'd had a boyfriend who had trained, I think, with George Pisari in Rhode Island. And he had told me that martial arts, kata was okay for women, but women did the kata and the men did the other stuff. So of course, being a young woman in the 70s, I believed that. But he did introduce me to Bruce Lee. And I really fell in love with the young lady who played his sister, Angela Mao. I just fell in love with the beauty of her movement. And as a dancer, I said, well, it's just like dancing, only it's fighting. So I kind of went in with that idea. And then needless to say, my paradigm shifted as I continued my journey. But seeing a woman was really important to me, because as a little girl, I was told I couldn't play baseball, and this was for girls and that was for boys, during those times. So I guess Enter the Dragon kind of was my introduction to what the martial arts could be.
You're not the first person to come on the show that made a transition from dance to martial arts. Can you tell us a little bit about your dance background? I bet we'll find some similarities in there as we go forward.
Well, I danced as a little girl and did tap, ballet, jazz and all of that stuff. And one of the opportunities I had as a fairly young child of 12 was I was actually invited to teach. And that actually developed my sense of teaching, working with young children, and also what it's like to be a young person teaching other children, which is something that I've done a lot with in my dojo. I do a lot of peer leadership. So, I can't say I had the best of training. I wasn't looking to be in the New York Ballet or anything, but there was just a huge amount of joy for me in that. Later on in my 20s, I did find a more serious ballet school. And that's where I really developed my sense of center and posture, and the importance of body mechanics. I learned about my own body, the good things in it that worked well and the bad things in it that didn't work well. But I also learned in ballet that there was a very specific conformity. You had to really have a perfectly straight spine. You really had to be a very symmetrical person to be able to get up there on point and perform beautifully. And I just wasn't born with the right physical attributes as much as I loved the workouts and the bar and just dancing. So I think that's a lot of what I took into martial arts, is being able to go from being a student, to a teacher, and having this huge respect for the body mechanics. I see myself as less of a scholar in the martial arts and more of someone who analyzes the qualities of movement and the essence of touch and things like that. So it's almost been kind of an organic education in that matter. And again, being an older woman, being a small person, being on the south side of 60, hitting hard and being, a UFC fighter is not my path. But what I do know, again, is the essence of movement and quality of movement and body mechanics and trying to find efficiency in movement. So I do think that the dance background really prepared me to head into that direction with teaching in the martial arts.
Right on. Now, some of the words you're using are words that I use, talking about movement, efficiency. One of the words that was coming to mind as you were talking, I would imagine that as you stepped into martial arts, because of your dance background, you had excellent proprioception. For listeners who may not know that word, I would describe it as knowing how to get the result out of your body that you want, where you exist in space. Did you have, well, I would imagine you had some advantages with your dance background stepping into your training. but maybe also some disadvantages, some inherited movement patterns that you had to unlearn. What was that experience like?
Well, that's a great question. The difference, I always tell people that the main differences between dance and the martial arts is that, number one, in dance, it is the music that is your motivation to move. And in martial arts, it is the attack that is your motivation to move. In dance, we try to breathe in and lift our bodies up to find our core and balance. And in the martial arts, we exhale and we bring our bodies down to root ourselves. In my early experiences with training, the dance didn't really help me at all, except that it gave me the dedication and the drive. And I knew that if I practiced and I try hard, I'd get the rewards of the stronger muscles and things like that. Being in the U.S., the kind of systems in martial arts that was offered was kind of limited. And, there's certainly a militaristic attitude from a lot of the male dojo owners teaching the Kempo and the Taekwondo schools here. So it was kind of, this is how you do it, and that's it, so that I did spend a long time just kind of doing what I was told. and it did serve me well, because I have an understanding about what that's all about. But, with the invention of the internet and the ability to communicate internationally, I've been able to feed my curiosity and take my journey in directions that I never would have been able to do if I just, stayed in those same dojos and just did as I was told. So the dance did help a little bit with my attitude towards training, but it didn't really help me with what I was being told to do. And now that I have kind of let go of a lot of those shackles and been able to pursue my own curiosities, at this much later age, I'm able to connect what my experience of dance was back to, the roots of actual movement and touch and how that psychologically affects people.
The vocabulary you're using as you're talking about movement tells me that you've gone pretty deep on some of this stuff. Is that a recent thing, or did you grow up Okay.
It kind of is.
How'd you get there?
Okay.
These aren't words I hear most people use in conversation.
I was a little American karate clone. I thought I had to hit hard. All the things I didn't like about myself were things that my body just wasn't built to do. And this is going to sound really insane, but I found the internet and I found my beloved Jesse Enkamp, the karate nerd. And he came to the U.S. very close to me, and I took the opportunity to go to his seminar because I had been following this young man's blog, having a son of my own. I found his experiences wonderful. And he pretty much just simply changed my philosophies that it was okay to be who I was. It was okay to find what worked for me, that we're all, he says this all the time, we're all trying to get to the top of the mountain, but we all can go up on our own path. And it was almost like this young man from the other side of the world just gave me permission to be myself. And on top of that, at that seminar, he introduced me to Hanshi Patrick McCarthy, who completely blew my mind with the scholarly knowledge that he had. And he told me that it was perfectly okay to be curious and to ask questions. And it was the release of this curiosity and the empowerment to ask questions that sent me on this journey beyond, the people who I had outgrown. And I had this desire to deconstruct what I had learned. Where did this come from? These people that came to America, they hadn't been training in Japan their whole lives. Where did it come from? I went to Okinawa with Jesse and met Jane Pankowitz, and I met my beloved Nakasone Koichi. And I felt like I found the source. And it sounds kind of corny, but it was such an epiphany for me because
not in this audience, don't worry.
But the things that I knew and loved and felt good about, I could see where they came from within all these other arts, because Jesse gave us an experience of several styles. Nakasone Koichi, I immediately connected with him because, first of all, his top student, Maki Taguchi, is a female, and she's amazing, and she's a top fighter, and she's a wonderful human, and he used her for all of his demonstrations. And he actually picked me out of the audience to come up because he could see how my eyes were lit up by what he was saying. And I've been to train with him a couple of times, and while I would never call myself his student, I have really adopted some of his major philosophies over the past few years that have really changed how I feel about myself and how I feel about my dojo and what I feel my mission is to teach. So the internet was pretty much my epiphany, I guess you could say.
And I think that no other technology has provided more epiphanies over the years than the internet. It sounds like yours was nothing but a positive one, though.
Exactly.
I think we could point to a few things where people maybe their epiphanies weren't serving them. But I want to go back. These changes, these philosophical adoptions that led to change. Could you go a little bit deeper on what those changes were?
With the traditional stuff I was doing, there was point fighting. There was this curriculum of self-defense. If they throw this punch, you do that. If they throw that punch, you do that. It didn't seem practical to me. During this time, as I was searching for information, I dug deep into the Kempo system that I had been taught, and I found a woman. I found a woman by the name of Kelly Aerosmith, and I reached out to her on Facebook, and I found out that she, having been a U.S. champion in point fighting and a highly regarded martial artist back in her day, I would say around the 70s, maybe the 80s, she gave up on the martial arts on the day that she was suddenly attacked and she was unable to defend herself with everything she knew. And she drove her passion into the realm of personal safety, where she still is today. So Kel and I really connected, and she began training me online in the mindsets of personal safety. So here is someone who was a great martial artist, but saw what was being taught as martial arts not being in value for keeping kids and keeping people safe. So that was there. Then I go and I meet Nakasone Koichi, who says that everything he teaches in the martial arts is for the purpose of personal defense. And he demonstrated that there's some techniques and some things that I've taken from him that I'm putting into my school and I'm experimenting with, and they work. I found a common denominator between Kelly Aerosmith in South Africa and Nakasone Koichi in Okinawa. So that told me right there I was on the right track. So what I did, kind of bravely, I must admit, is I threw out point fighting at my school, threw out sparring, threw out rules. I took all of the curriculum I had and I'm reworking it. It's still a work in progress. I'm not changing it, but I'm trying to find ways that make it practical and useful against everything. An example would be, you don't say, okay, he throws in a right front punch or it's a grab. When we're practicing our self-defense, every attack is random. So if what you have doesn't work on everything, then it's not useful for you. So it's become a personal journey for each person within their curriculum. They still do their kata. They still do their kabuto. We're definitely happy to be touching each other and working on jujitsu right now. But there is that goal that if you need it, you have it. So with the smaller dojos, with the smaller, my dojos almost become like my little science lab to kind of work on this stuff. And I'm kind of excited because I think I'm on a really good track. In America, from what I see, everything's just my opinion. Please, people understand that. It's just my opinion. I see the martial arts and personal safety as being two specifically different things. What I'm trying to do is create a bridge between training kids and people in the martial arts to their personal safety. And a lot of it has to do with just the way they think about it. We all know, look at all of these wonderful instructors like Ian Abernathy, who I had the opportunity to meet through Jesse Enkamp as well, where he really thinks outside the box, practical bunkai. I mean, all you have to do is change the way you think, and everything you already had or have becomes new and wonderful. So with that in mind, we're not trying to do new things. We're taking our old things and really seeing what we can find in there and finding what's efficient, where the body mechanics are, making every person have their own toolbox of what they think would work for them.
You dig into some really good and important stuff that we've talked about quite a bit on the show. The idea that martial arts is not necessarily the best methodology for personal defense. A solid martial arts curriculum can include personal defense, but if one was to take a big step back and say, all right, I want to make people as safe as possible to defend themselves should a random attack occur, there are a lot of things in martial arts that we're not going to worry about. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean martial arts are useless, because everybody's got a different why. And what I'm hearing from you is that you have multiple whys and you're trying to reconcile all of these things, which sometimes are at odds, and find a way that checks all of your boxes and codifies your vision for what your school should be.
I think you kind of get me, Jeremy.
I do, because I think you and I have a tremendous amount in common.
That makes me happy to hear, because, in doing this, I did sacrifice I'm not in a system anymore. I went rogue, as they say. And I needed that because, and I'm not creating my own system, and I'm not making Linda Lane's karate. I call my school Kensho, which means to discover yourself, self-enlightenment. And I'm very transparent about everything I teach. I tell them, what is Nick Serio's Kenpo? What is Shotokan? What is Shorin-ryu? What is Goju-ryu? I teach the kids in a traditional manner with Japanese terminology. So if they went to a dojo, hopefully anywhere in the world, they'd be able to participate in a class.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give them that universal education, and I don't stamp my name on anything and pretend I invented it like so many of my teachers did before me.
One of my favorite sayings of my own, this developed over years: there are only so many ways that you can move the body, and only some of them make sense within a combative context. Other people have said similar things.
I say exactly the same thing. The common denominator amongst us all is our joints move the same way. Right. We have a brain, we have a body, and when we learn to use, those mechanisms to our best ability, the common denominator is we all a lock is a lock. You can't lock a wrist any different way than the locks that exist in jiu-jitsu. Right. So, like I said, I guess those common denominators, like the common denominators between the philosophies of my mentors. I also was very fortunate to meet a man by the name of David Lindsay here in Rhode Island, and he's kind of the resident scholar in this area. And he saw the way folks were treating me, and he loved my curiosity, and he kind of took me under his wing as well. And he also has this same vision of the universality of, you can edit that word out, of everything, that common denominator. He would give me katas of different styles, and we'd explore, the mindsets behind each. And it really goes back to what I say, a movement is a movement. It's only the way you think about that movement that makes it different. So, the symbol of my school is the mountain, the sun, and the water, the mind, body, spirit. And that's the essence of Kenpo in Okinawa, to my opinion, is that it's just this unification of the mind, body, and the spirit, and just making you the best you that you can be. And hopefully along the way, get some tools that you can use if you need them.
Let me preface what I'm going to ask you with the fact that you are not, I get the sense that you think you may be in the minority in some of the things you're thinking and saying. You are not. You and I are very much on the same page. But I'm going to read between the lines here, and you even underscored it for me, the way others were treating you. There's been something that's gone on as you've made this transition, it sounds like, out of what you were doing into what you are now doing, that it sounds like you caught some flack.
Well, I did.
Are you willing to talk about that? You don't have to name names.
Yeah, I will talk about it,
okay,
because I think I'm very, I think I can do that in a very diplomatic and practical way. Like I said, I was in a system that was very good to me. It was a Kenpo-based system. I did own a school, and I was the only female school owner, of course. And while the grandmaster of the system, I have to say, for quite a long time, was very good and generous with me. The other males in the system, they used to call me the cupcake school, and I did horrible things like require face coverings for my kids when they sparred, and I didn't allow children to have a lot of head contact. So I was, they were very old school, and as a mother, I took a great responsibility for the safety of my children. Having a husband whose knees got blown out when he was a child playing hockey, and seeing what he went through as an adult with, this injury haunting him. There's no way I want a child to have an injury that's going to haunt them as an adult. So that was really super important to me. And I think a lot of it came out where I was considered subpar, but yet whenever we had tournaments, my students won everything. So, sometimes you're not popular for the reasons you think you should be. And there actually came a point where these men got together, went to the grandmaster and said, if either she goes or we go. And I give him credit. I also was his biggest earner at the time. I was bringing the most money into the system. And he said, well, she's not doing anything wrong. She's just doing things differently than you. And all of these men splintered away. And I became known as that troublemaking woman who ruined the system. So as a result, here I am.
You.
It was a little painful, and I stayed with this grandmaster. I was very loyal to him for a while, but then, again, I think I outgrew him, and there's a little, there's always little betrayals here and there and whatnot. And I think sometimes it's hard for somebody who isn't continuing their journey of learning because they feel that they have everything they need to have a student with this incredible curiosity. So, we parted on the best of terms, but it also left me alone. Except for, thank God for David Lindsay. He really continued my training, and his words to me I'll never forget was, Linda, the best revenge you can make is to get better than all of these guys. Let's make you really good at jujitsu. And it was just a nice place to put myself. So I've been working with him for many years. And then when I met Jesse on the internet, and I met the people through the Karate Nerd experience, I found my tribe. I found people that valued me, that thought I was cool, that loved my crazy Rhode Island accent. And, the connection, the love I have for these people. And even again, I keep saying my beloved Nakasone Koichi, he's just someone I just felt such a deep connection to. When I went back to Okinawa, he made time to work with me privately because he knew how passionate I was to teach his philosophy. So the pandemic hit and it's been really tough. But thanks to Bujin TV, I've been able to kind of keep up with some of these instructors, and I already have plans to go back as soon as travel's allowed. So at this late point in my life, I feel like the biggest blossom of my journey is happening. So if anything, I could tell people it's just never too late to start. When your body starts to be older and not what you were as a person, you just got to kind of reevaluate what you have, because gosh, there's a way to use it.
I agree. All right, let's go back. Let's unpack some of that stuff. And I think you did a beautifully diplomatic job of explaining that. And what you've talked about is not, unfortunately, it's not as rare as you may think. You know, we've heard similar stories. I get a lot of stories before and after these recordings, folks. You may not realize all the stuff I know that I can't talk about.
I think the U.S., obviously isn't the best place to get, a true traditional martial arts education, just because of the origins of where everything came through. I think it's changing now. There are some amazing traditional schools, around now. But I just think it's just kind of that militaristic influence on, what was brought here. And it's just, and it's kind of macho and all of that stuff, and God, deity kind of stuff. And I just think I'm part of the shaking of it off. I think it's being shook.
Yeah. And remember how almost all of us in the United States, and I would assume in what we would generally call the West, most of us trace our martial arts lineage to a person who learned what they learned while serving in the military.
And this is kind of an opinion that my teacher, David Lindsay, shared with me. He said, you have all these Americans that went over there and probably became brown belts over there. And then they came here and started systems. And the funny thing is, when I went back to Okinawa, I could see that what I had was part of it, but there was so much more to it. And again, it goes to that essence of touch. It goes from that hard pounding, banging, cracking into that super gentle, manipulation that involves the mind, and the body. And those Americans didn't get there before they came here and said, this is it. This is everything you have to know. Right. So it's just my opinion, but I think it holds a little bit.
You're not the only one with that opinion. There's a lot to be said for that. We hear these stories over the years that, people were taught differently because they were American, or they were taught a reduced curriculum, or they were taught an expedited curriculum because they knew they wouldn't be there forever. Whatever it is, I think there's a lot of synergy in that aspect of what you're talking about. Also with these other contemporary Kempo instructors of yours who didn't like what you were doing. And here's why I think that the two relate. If we look at what we know, whatever you know today as a martial artist, if your assumption is that is all I need to know, or all there is to know, all I want to know, you're pretty much done training. And one of the things I think we see with a lot of martial arts school owners who've been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years, for whatever reason, whether it's boredom, or they're tired, or they just don't want to start over, whatever it is, they put a cap at whatever they know. And here you come doing things not only differently, which they probably would have been fine with if you weren't as good, if your students weren't competing at a high level at competition and winning over their students. If you just turned out crummy students, they probably wouldn't have cared that you were different. But you were different and you got results. And so now that forces them to have to find some way to remain the hero in their own story. This is one of my big worldview shifts over the last couple of years, recognizing that everyone has to be the hero in their own story. Otherwise, things really fall apart for us. So you expose these massive gaps where they could be better and they couldn't handle it. And so they had to do the only thing they knew how to do, which was discredit you in some way. And then when that didn't work, they just ignored you. They put up their blinders. They walked away from this organization. And we see this, unfortunately, time and time and time again. And one of the things that I see when I talk to people who I have had the opportunity to work with that are wonderful martial artists, honestly, the ones that have the most to share are the ones that are most willing to admit that they don't know everything. They keep that white belt mentality with everything that they do. And yeah, doesn't mean they don't own a school. It doesn't mean they don't teach a class or classes or guide students from white belt to black belt at a world-class caliber. But it means they recognize that there's other stuff in the mix that they don't know, and they're open to learning it. And I'm not going to name names, but actually you named 3 big names, folks who have been on the show, and all 3 of them have that mindset. They're all willing to learn from others. And it's a positive. I'm hesitating whether I'm going to name this name. I'm not going to name this name, even though this would be a very positive thing. Somebody who came on in the first 100 episodes completely changed my mindset on this. This was someone who was headlining an event. And once he was done teaching, sat on the bleachers, watching essentially, quote unquote, nobodies teaching their events. And he wasn't just watching respectfully, he was watching to learn. And it blew my mind.
And I think, again, as much as the grandmaster that I had, I owe him a lot. I think it was because when his teacher died, he felt there was no other teacher for him. And he didn't embrace the internet. And I think he just, again, when you feel like your cup is full, that's where you are. And my students, since I've been traveling and learning, the students that have been with me for a really long time have just loved the evolution of the material and the ways of thinking. And every time they, and I say, I hate to leave you guys, but I'm going away to train. And they say, Sensei, when you come back, you always have great things for us. And I give them a little taste of things. And I do, again, I don't brand anything as my own. I tell them where it came from. I try to give them a smorgasbord of information. Like when I was a little kid, it was tap, ballet, baton twirling. It was a little bit of everything. So they can find their own journey. I don't want disciples. I want people, like you said, that can go anywhere in the world or to any dojo and feel okay to step in and take a class. So I think by simplifying that, it opened my door. And quite frankly, I wear a white belt in my dojo. I don't wear a black belt. I wear a white belt when I teach. And part of it is to symbolize the fact that I am not rankable by a system at this point. And that while rank is very important for children and people to understand their progress, their journey is between me and them. And it's not about things, it's about, finding that. So, again, it is very unique, but it's made me happy. And I have to say, with the pandemic, a lot of the younger students dropped off. I did a lot of the Zoom teaching like everybody else, but a lot of the younger kids dropped off, and I've been hesitant to pick them back up again because closings could happen again. And quite frankly, the pressure of not having to make a buck by having all these little kid classes has really given me the energy to pursue the art more with the serious students. And again, going to Okinawa, it made me feel okay with this because they kind of joke around that every taxi driver there probably owns a dojo, that they won't give you a loan for a dojo in Okinawa unless you have another job. So I actually took a small second job so that my dojo can, take care of itself and I don't have to be dependent on it financially. And taking that off my shoulders, I really think is giving me this opportunity to continue to grow. And I actually do have so much admiration and respect for the people that do a great job monetizing their dojos. I just think they're amazing. I've tried to do it. And again, at my age, life just has to be enjoyable. It wasn't enjoyable for me.
It's
So
not for
actually,
everybody.
It's not.
And that's okay.
But it is. You're right. It's okay. And it's so funny that people like you and again, like Jesse and like Hanshi McCarthy and my jujitsu teacher and my teacher in South Africa, Kelly, that's exactly, it's just, why is it that just having people tell me it's okay was all I needed? So I'm here to tell everybody it's okay.
I have no way of determining the statistics on this, but my gut, just from my time training over my life, this show, the other things that we do, the majority of martial arts schools are part-time. That is my sense, just not necessarily by numbers of students, but by numbers of entities, numbers of schools. The majority, as far as I can tell, are part-time. The owner, the instructor has another job, at least to supplement.
Well, in our neck of the woods, a lot of those small dojos were not able to manage with the pandemic and whatnot. So there's been a lot of those going away. The Mick dojos, as you will, and again, I hate to chastise them because they're making a buck. They're doing something I'm not willing to do. They know how to make a buck, and they've gotten more into childcare, like, after schools, and they got buses and they're shipping people in. And like, that's, I try to make it my job to educate people that there's just different kinds of karate schools or martial arts schools. And you really need to know what it is you deal with. Is your kid going there to be entertained and get social skills, or are you looking for a place to really teach them karate? So I do think, the bigger schools are doing very well. And I think there's going to be more of them for that reason, because they've been able to embrace the pandemic and make it useful to them.
And it depends on where you are, because there are places and specifics that I'm thinking of now where the opposite is true, that because the entirety of the income for that person, or in many cases people, a whole slate of people, was based around in-person classes, and they weren't able to maintain, and jobs were lost. Whereas the part-time schools, that owner, they lost some of their income, but they still had their full-time job. They tightened their belt. They put a couple months on credit cards, and the school survives.
I think the bottom line is it made us all make big decisions about what we wanted. It certainly made me decide, that I wanted just to take a path that was different. And it really, so I'm kind of grateful in that aspect of it. Like and again, at my age, it's really nice to only bite off as much as I can chew at a time. Oh, my goodness.
Well, here's a question, because you've been through a lot. There are a lot of changes that have occurred, and I would expect philosophically more than anything else. So what if you had the opportunity to take all this knowledge, all this perspective that you have now from all these travels and engagements with people, and go back to, the first few years of your training, and you get to put a fork in the road. You can follow the path that you've followed, or you can kind of skip ahead in a sense and take this knowledge and run with it. Would you have taken this other path?
I would love to have had a school like mine when I was a child, because I was always interested in karate, but girls didn't do karate. And that's one of the reasons I danced. So I would have loved to have a school like mine. But I don't know that I would change anything. And there's been a lot of satisfaction in deconstructing what I was given. It's been it's made it my own a little more than that. So in hindsight, it's the old hindsight thing, would I love to be a young person knowing what I know as an adult? Oh, hell yes. I'd love to be a teenager again. I'd make a lot of really good decisions about myself. But as far as the martial arts goes, not everyone can start as a child, and not everyone's journey is just that. It's their journey. Not everyone's a big, strong guy. Not everyone's a UFC quality fighter. Not everybody can hit the Makinawa, and not everybody can, break bricks. But not everybody has to.
Not everybody wants to.
And that's just it. Not everybody wants to. Right now, again, I've developed this tribe internationally, and I've actually been in talks with some of my colleagues, one in Mexico, one in the UK, and we're looking to pull together some personal safety information that the dojos can share that will be more successful, whether they add it to their curriculum or whether, again, my mantra is to bridge the gap with their martial arts training. So we're starting to collaborate a bit internationally with the focus on the needs of the children in each of our countries for safety. For example, the needs of a child in Mexico are very different than the needs of a child in the U.S. Sure. So we're trying to kind of come together a little bit. And I think that's going to be another exciting chapter down the road.
That sounds really cool. I want to go back to the white belt part. Let's unpack that a little bit, because it's interesting. It's really interesting to me, and I've got some questions because I haven't seen it done. I mean, I'm happy to put on a white belt. When I step into someone else's school, I put on a white belt. Most often. I was wearing a white belt last night, and I have no issue with that. What I'm wondering is, first, when you're at the front of the class in your school wearing a white belt, has that created any confusion among newer students or parents or anybody else stepping in?
Well, quite frankly, it kind of hasn't, which I thought was really interesting, because I would say, does this, what is this, does this thing around my waist change who I am or what I am? And I wrote a blog post, a very detailed blog post about why does Sensei Linda wear a white belt? And if anyone has a question, I just send them there. And it's really kind of cool. And again, I have to credit Jesse Enkamp. He's had an impact in my life. I joke around that online relationships can work because I met him online. But he came out with a kind of a novelty belt called the Shoshen Belt. And while all of my colleagues had these black belts that they were rubbing against trees and, trying to wear out so they looked like they had these raggedy black belts around their waist, which no one in Okinawa would be caught dead with. If their belt looked crummy, they'd buy a new belt. But Jesse came up with this idea of a white belt that had black underneath it. And as I was evolving from the need to be endowed with rank by others for financial purposes, needless to say, I thought, this is perfect for me. I'm going to take this belt. So I got this white Shoshen belt, and I've been wearing it for several years now. And it's just starting to show a little wear. And it's like, this is my journey, because I'm going to be giving myself a black belt by the time this is black. And I'll look at it and go, oh, I'm a green belt now. and when I go to Okinawa, I can wear it because I would never wear anything but a white belt in anybody's class. And the funny part is nobody's ever questioned it. And all I can think of is, my husband is at the dojo, and for a long time, my son, who's a huge guy, was at the dojo. But nobody questions that the person in charge and the authority is me. So I guess I kind of carry myself in a way that needs no question. That's the only thing I can think of.
That's perfect. You answered all my questions on that subject as you talked, so thank you. But what I'm also imagining this, and it doesn't surprise me that Jesse came up with something that cool. He's a great guy. He's been on the show.
He is a young man, and again, I followed his journey, and I just found him to be such an interesting individual. And again, I've had people knock me because, he's Borat. And I'm like, the guy speaks like 5 languages. He speaks, and I was like, are you kidding me? But anyway, like I said, these are people who would not put on a pink belt. And that was the thing about Jesse, that he eliminated. He found our tribe just by saying, you have to wear a pink belt, because nobody I ever trained with ever put on a pink belt. I mean, they used to put pink belts on kids as punishments.
Right.
So, again, what does a belt say? It's and again, like I say, I really contribute a lot to Jesse in allowing me to express the way I already felt openly. And like I said, the whole belt thing is, how many, really.
I want to make a Willy Wonka belt. That's your rank progression in reverse, black and then like a thin layer of brown over it. And then, you kind of wear it away and you get these rainbow patches. I think that'd be kind of cool.
It is. And again, I love wearing a gi. Nothing makes me feel more, I don't know. I just love wearing a gi. It's not spandex, it just makes you a human being, and it means people can grab you and slap you and swat you, and it protects your body. And there's something about it that makes us all the same. And I think that's what's a beautiful thing about, again, James Pankowitz has events where he's opened the door to, again, when I say people like me, Americans like me with no pedigree would never be allowed into the dojos of these masters. Yet James Pankowitz, who I call the jewel of Okinawa, he is just like allowed people, he feels your passion. And that man has treated me so well that it's actually brought tears to my eyes that someone would be that nice to me and give me the opportunities to train with all of these different people. And sometimes that's all it takes is just giving people that opportunity. It's not about their pedigree. It's not about their athleticism. It's not about their talent. It's about the enthusiasm they bring into the room and the amount of effort. Enthusiasm and effort are really the only things you need, in my opinion.
I agree. If you care about what you're doing and you work hard at it, eventually you're going to learn some stuff.
Absolutely. And again, these people that give these opportunities, I've known people that have trained in Okinawa, and I've known people that have gone, but like you had to have some secret password to get in there or some, and there was ranking issues. And the funny part is the great masters there are the sweetest, most lovely people in the world. And by James giving regular people like me access to them, it's done nothing but strengthen the art. So, I kind of like where things are going in the martial arts, for me especially. And like I say, it's never too late. I mean, I'm looking forward to the next 10 years I have in training in the arts.
Nice. If people want to find you, website, social media, any stuff like that you're willing to share?
Sure. My dojo is called Kensho Karate in Rhode Island. I do have a website. It's called shikonryu.com, SHIKONRYU.com. It's a crazy name of a tournament form we used to teach. But you know how it is. You get yourself a website name and you keep it. I'd say my school's kind of small and exclusive at this point. I like serious students, but at the same time, I have been pursuing personal safety, and I've been doing things. I do go and give talks, and I am open to going to places, and those who will have me. And at the same time, I'm always looking to make my tribe bigger. So if there's anyone that's like-minded or, here I am.
Nice. And you've shared a lot of great stuff, but this is where we're going to wind down. So what are your final words to the audience?
Well, I guess my final words are that martial arts is for everyone. If you have a child who doesn't like sports, isn't very athletic, maybe quiet, maybe real smart, bring them to a traditional martial arts school. They will thrive there. And like I say, if it's on your bucket list, do it, because you're never too late. All you're going to do is learn about yourself and how to be your most positive and efficient you.
Well, I really enjoyed that conversation, and I'm sure all of you did too. I want to thank you, Sensei Linda, for coming on the show. I want to thank those of you listening for your support and for listening to a conversation that I really enjoyed. You know, every time we do a show, I try to put myself in the place of the audience, to ask the questions that you would want me to ask, to represent you. And I feel like that went really well this time. I think we all came away with a better understanding of who she is and where she's going and where she's been. And my favorite part of all of that is, in understanding her, we get to understand a bit of our own journey. And yeah, I'm waxing philosophical today. I don't know why. But thanks for coming on the show. Thanks to those of you listening. Now, if you want to help us out, if you want to help make sure that there are future episodes, that we can continue to do the things that we do and do bigger and better things in the future, help us out. Spread the show. Tell people about what we're doing. Pick something up at the website. Sign up for the newsletter. Join the Patreon. It all helps. To those of you who have done those things, thank you. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, we've got a really cool strength and conditioning program that you can check out at whistlekickprograms.com. It's really inexpensive and bizarrely effective, probably because I made it, with some really solid martial arts principles and the latest science. So check that out. I want to thank you for your support, for listening, and let me know if you have any feedback. Jeremy@whistlekick.com. Until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.